Okay, I see you there. It says devices not connected. Please, can you add your... All right. I do see you there, Maipelo. It says your devices are not connected. In the meantime, call the other children. It seems as if the network witches are very, very, very busy on this beautiful Sunday. Look at our network, right? You know, some of the challenges of living in a third world situation is we don't have simple things like internet that is efficient and fast and, you know, so please bear with us and give me feedback on, are we coming through? Are we coming through? You have come through.
Hi.
But your camera is not on. There we go. Sawubona,
Hi. Let me
mama.
also close you. Better or dark?
Okay.
Is it
I
better?
know the whole dynamic
Let me
is a
switch the
bit
light
dark.
on.
It might have been better earlier.
Yeah, let me.
Yes. We're just waiting for our guest of honor. That's much better, Mamkai.
Yeah.
And it's actually fantastic that
Maipelo.
Maipelo is still struggling because in the meantime, Maipelo.
Yes.
Meantime, because you know, Tina, we always come empty. We
Yes.
come with our cups empty, not knowing. In my life, you are the influence that makes me look at geopolitical issues and not just South Africa. I hope that Mamkani can still hear us. But
I
I
can
want
hear
us
you
to, I
perfectly.
want her to quickly give us what are the politics that's in Botswana, what we're supposed to know, because obviously you know how things are. If we had to Google the politics of Botswana, we're going to system wants us to know. So we're hoping to actually learn about Botswana from the real people standing. Mophuting, are you there? Can you hear us? I know the
I can.
network, which is just so busy. But I lit my candle, I lit my pepper. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do so that this conversation can happen. What we enjoy on MOYA is that it's exposing all these incredible women and like they're doing their thing on the side, they're in politics and on their podcasts talking like men. But when you come to MOYA, you're gonna find the firebrands, you're gonna find the women, you're gonna find a lot more than you expected to find. So I'm just waiting for our guests. The comment section is definitely open. Anybody who's got any questions, as I was saying to Mam, so I'm sure a lot of us don't who's the ANC of Botswana, who's the EFF of Botswana. We don't know anything. We just know we just know that the system has got the same blueprint everywhere. You're gonna have an ANC, you're gonna have the opposition, you're gonna have the system. Wait for Mophuting, Masi. Maybe can you just throw us into what are we supposed to know as we invite the guest about Botswana?
Hello, Dumelang Kako, Mam Khanyi, Sis Nziki, how are you? I hope you all are well. First things first, my sincere apologies. Obviously, the network is extremely... Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly.
Mam Khanyi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You're just seeing beautiful. Oh, but I now I can. We introduce the speaker.
Am
Here we
I
go.
the one?
Can we start now?
Yes, we can start.
Ooh la la.
Oh, okay, fine.
Oh.
Am I audible?
Slowly.
Am I audible?
Yes. Perfectly.
Oh. Okay.
Perfectly.
Am I the one introducing the speaker?
Could you just give us a little bit about Botswana politics, because we're coming from South Africa and we don't know who the ANC of Botswana is. We don't know what's what. So just a small intro on what we should know before we introduce the steering.
That would be me.
Yes, you are the steering. I think that she can do a better job at that because it's her country. But needless to say that they have been, like us, under a one-party dictatorship. The whole of Southern Africa, actually, Tsigi. And I have often talked in numerous platforms about this, that while we have the best infrastructure thus far, I mean, I've been to 39, I think it's about 41 now, African countries, and the South by far has got the best infrastructure because we were all direct colonies. So they were not developing it for us, but for themselves, but then we benefited by default. So despite having the best superstructures thus far, we are not moving because we all have been living under this veil, unfortunately, of one-party dictatorships, which are a problem because it's easy to buy one party than to buy a multi-party. But again, I want to warn us against ours, because what happened in ours is not really a multi-party democracy. Honorable Maipelo will explain to us perfectly.
We seem to have lost Mamkani there. Maipelo, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of celebrating you and your journey, your political journey. I don't know if everybody's hanging. It looks like everyone's hanging. Guys, we're having network issues.
I can hear you, and I can hear Dr. Tshabalala.
I can hear you also. I can hear both of you.
I wonder.
You can't hear me?
I think it's on Ziki's end.
When it's time to have important conversations, it just gets so interesting because
we think it's on your side.
Technical glitches like you can't believe. Here we're trying to have a conversation between South Africa and Botswana and trying to see where do we find the link and where do we start working together so that, change comes from actually the people, because the politicians are not here to change anything for us. So we thought to have this conversation. Um, oh, that's so interesting. So you can hear everybody. And now look, they've just fallen off again. And I really hope this doesn't happen throughout. Otherwise, we might have to change the time.
I
Because it's a
can
little bit
hear.
boring to like engage.
I can hear Maipelo. Maipelo can hear me.
Oh, the
So
problem is on my side.
yes.
Okay. Okay, guys. I don't know if you can hear.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly well, Mzigi.
We can hear you.
Perfect. Now I can hear you guys perfectly as well.
Okay.
All right.
Come up.
So then, yes. So, Mama, yes, Kamaku, indeed. You were giving us an overview before we let Maipelo break it down properly for us.
Yes. Yeah, I was saying, like us, you can hear us again.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me? I can see my pillow now.
We can hear
So
you.
the whole time.
Yes. The
The
whole
thing is, you
time.
keep disappearing off the screen.
Is it?
You keep disappearing off the. Okay, fine. When you disappear, let me just keep quiet. Sorry, I disappear. I'm just gonna keep quiet. So, Mom,
Yeah.
sorry. Let me let you finish.
Yes. So yeah, I was saying Botswana, sadly, like us, have been living under a one-party dictatorship. That's the whole region, actually. And I guess that's because we are all direct colonies. We're all directly colonized, whether some were protectorates or not. The definition of a direct colony is where you have a physical settlers coming to live there. We actually call them settler colonies. But also by default, because of that, they develop the infrastructure. So while we are by far the most developed region, we have not really capitalized on that because of one-party dictatorships. I mean, it's easy to buy a party than to buy a conglomerate of parties. I must warn us, though, Ntsiki, to say the GNU in South Africa, Government of National Unity, Maipelo, is not really the way to go about collaborative governments. The way Botswana is doing it, for me, is a better example, and she will explain why I say so. Because for us, everybody contested on their own, and then when they realize they've lost or didn't get, the percentages that they wanted, then they collaborate. That's why there's so much infighting still. So the way we are doing ours, nothing is going to work because the policies are not the same, because it was not a prior discussion. So that's a bit about Botswana. I think the second thing, she will elaborate on it. There's a Botswana on paper, on reports. UN, World Bank, and all the people that want to epitomize Botswana as a shining example of democracy. And there's a really lived Botswana. And I think she will talk to us about the really lived one. The one on paper, we all know, we are told they are the best example that shows that multinational companies can plant back in the country. They can work with government. DPS is working with the government of Botswana, and Debswana is okay. It's doing all right. It's planting back into the economy. That picture. And then she'll tell us about the real lived one, which is what has actually made opposition to rise up in these elections, and be popular and threaten the ruling party. So I think I'll leave it there.
Phew, is this where I chip in?
Yes.
Great stuff. First things first, once again, thank you for having me. Um, I think I've got 45 minutes left and then I have to be back on the ground. We're 3 days away from elections and it is insane. Nziki, Botswana has been, we were decolonized, so to speak. We were actually never colonized. We were a protectorate. Every single thing that you see currently in the country is what we as Botswana, maybe in partnership with stakeholders from outside, have built from scratch. The difference with Botswana and the other, say, SADC countries that were colonized is that we actually went and sought protection from the British. Now, at the time, diamonds had not been discovered. So obviously, they didn't even do any infrastructure, nothing, zero, zilch. Fast forward when we became an independent state, diamonds were discovered. And then obviously our first president at the time, Sesra Zakama, the government then got into partnership with De Beers, and then they formed what we call Botswana. It's now like a 50-50 joint venture between the Botswana government and the De Beers group. And that's like the diamond company that everyone seems to be talking about, Botswana. My country is a relatively peaceful country. Over the years, Botswana has really been doing well. I'm not trying to say everything has been perfect, everything has been rosy, but what worked for the previous generations is obviously not what is working for us now. 58 years later, there is not a single, we call them Botswana Baseke, that means the locals who form part of those that are controlling the economy. Our economy is literally controlled by an elite few, those that are connected to the ruling party of Asian descent. So that is where we find ourselves 58 years later, where Banaba Botswana, majority of us are jobless, and we're now having to even leave the country because the economic situation is so bad. But let me just backtrack a little. I told you about how when we got out of being a protectorate, what now happened is when we got into this joint venture with De Beers, what the government invested heavily in is taking Botswana outside of the country, paying for school fees, and we were getting educated. But now we came back and it's like, okay, so we've spent all this money educating Botswana, but what are they doing? We're working for Chinese, we're working for Indians, and the very few Botswana that are connected to the ruling class or the ruling elite. So that is where we are right now. We are by far the unemployment rate in the country, especially amongst youth, is at an all-time high. I think we're sitting at close to 30% or something ridiculous like that. Forbes did a survey and said 70% of the population in Botswana are actually youth. We're jobless. We were working in choppies. Choppies is like it's like one of these Chinese. Sorry, it's an Indian owned, like your Checkers. It's the equivalent to your Checkers or your ShopRite here in Botswana. We're getting paid like about 800 bula. The minimum wage is about a little over 1,000 rands if I can just convert it. Graduates are in filling stations, working as petrol attendants. The list goes on and on and on. Nziki. The healthcare system that used to be one of the best in Africa has almost collapsed. The education system, which was one of the best in Africa, has completely collapsed. There are stories of children that are now told by teachers to come to school with chairs. Teachers are working overtime. We have literally regressed about 50 years. But like I said, not everything has been bad. And Dr. Tshabalala spoke about the infrastructure. You know, she was here a couple of days ago. She's like, Botswana has really developed. We are making strides, but not fast enough. And where we are, you know, the country is seething with quite a lot of tension because we are completely we're completely isolated from the economy. So what we are calling for as an organization, Umbrella for Democratic Change, by the way, the organization that I belong to is the main opposition. And we are an umbrella of 3 different political parties. And were led by Advocate Duma Gideon Boko, deputized by Ndaba Haulatle. You know, those are like brilliant minds. Our president is like he's a human rights advocate. Our vice president is, of course, he's like a world-renowned economist. You know, we are a group of organized, by no means perfect, but we're organized. We've got a bit of youth, not as many women as we would like it to be. It's very difficult for women to get into the space in Ziki. Botswana still remains a very patriarchal society, so not many women actually want to raise their hands and run for public office. I, of course, coming from people like Dr. Tshabalala and quite a lot of women within the ANC Women's League that I had the privilege of being behind the scenes with for some years. These were women that fought the liberation movement. So obviously my boldness, yes, comes from my character, but also from the support structure that I have had when I was in South Africa, housed by people such as Dr. Tshabalala. Yes. So that is the current reality. And maybe I'm not as detailed as Dr. Tshabalala because at the end of the day, Nziki, I love my country. I am admitting that things are not good, just like in South Africa. We have similar problems. I spoke about the healthcare system. I spoke about the education system. I spoke about how foreigners are literally controlling our economy. In South Africa, you guys are complaining about that. You call it white monopoly capital and so on and so forth. So our problems are almost inextricably intertwined. But the country that I come from, obviously, it is not as bad as other African countries. And I always say that to Dr. Tshabalala. And I'm not really trying to paint a rosy picture when things are not well. But what I am saying and what we are saying as an organization is that BDP, 58 years, you have tried. Now, moving on to the next 58 years or however long Botswana give us the mandate, we want to now take it to the next level. And like the last half or the next half of where we want to go, we want to ensure that Botswana are part and parcel of the economy. You see, the real battle here is the battle for control of the economy of this nation. It needs to go into the hands of the locals. Yes, ma'am.
So I think what you did not explain is how you formed the coalition of UDC before the elections, because that's totally different from how it happened here. And I think that would be interesting for South Africans to hear. You did refer that it's an umbrella, but you need to say how many political parties and how are you sharing power? Like you said, who's the head, who's the deputy, how were they chosen? Because you are campaigning as one. You are not campaigning as those different parties for elections. That's crucial for South Africans to.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the question. So the Umbrella for Democratic Change was formed in 2000 and
12,
2010, if I'm not
10.
mistaken, 2010 to 2012. 2012, I think fatigue, Dr. Tshabalala,
Mm.
2012. And basically, the reason we formed a coalition is we we knew and understood that we are up against, in Setswana we say mokaloba. That's like a giant, so to speak. It's been the ruling party for the past 58 years, like Dr. Chabalala has described it. It's practically we're practically in a one state democracy. So we realized that one party in Botswana, the chances of it taking state power on its own, very, very slim.
Mm.
So, like in the example that I can think of is it's in Malawi. They formed a coalition before the elections,
Mm.
and the then BMD was a breakaway from the ruling party. And another one of the other opposition parties, which just exited a couple of months ago. But basically, it's just three different organizations, political parties that have come together into one umbrella, because we've realized, especially Botswana are saying to us, we want to vote for change, but we need the opposition to work together.
Mm.
So that's basically who we are. We are not like the GNU, like what Dr. Chabalala was explaining, where it's like, okay, nobody got a complete majority and then they scramble and look for positions to try and form a government. However, I must mention something, if I may. Surveys and predictions are basically alluding to they're not going to be one party that comes out with a clear majority. Therefore, even post-elections, if that is how it comes out, well, obviously, we may be forced to actually come into a coalition. The difference between Botswana and South Africa is that we have what you call first past the post. Now, what first past the post is,
Okay.
the party that has the most number of seats, even though they didn't reach the threshold, which is like 31, they still have the power to rule. But they will not have the numbers in parliament to basically pass laws and legislature and so on and so forth. So the importance of forming a coalition post elections, if that's what it gets to, is for the sake of passing laws, legislature, and just so that the country can continue, things like systems can just continue in place. You need to have parties coming together to form at least 31 out of the 61 constituencies. So you guys have proportional representation and we have got constituency type makeup. So there are 61 constituencies that are up for grabs. And in order for you to govern as a majority government on your own, you need 31. So getting back to the first past the post, it actually means that for the umbrella for democratic change, best case scenario, for us to govern, we need 31 seats. But if we do not, say we get about 25 seats, maybe the BDP gets about 24 seats, we're going to have to work with other parties that are not necessarily in the umbrella, and we can have our 31 seats and then we can govern. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I want to return it to Ntsigi, but quickly just say it's the same system, Maipelo. We also use first past the post.
Oh.
Ntsigi, are you on? Do you hear us?
So then, then what's the point of parliament? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. We can hear you. Okay, now she's faded.
Now she's faded.
Now you
What's
faded,
going to happen?
Nsiki.
But basically, I was asking Guti.
Now she's faded.
Now you faded,
What's going to
Nsiki.
happen? But basically, I was this network thing. I don't know what we're gonna do.
We're gonna soldier on. We're gonna soldier on.
We're gonna soldier on. What were you asking, Nsiki?
Okay, fine. So I wanted to know. I mean, you want to get into parliament now, and I'm asking, what is the point of parliament then, guys? If we are seeing the same blueprint across all the countries on the continent.
Yeah, I guess Maipelo will answer for herself, but I have often said in countless platforms, Nsiki, that there is not a single African parliament in all 54 countries now, 55 with Western Sahara the day Morocco lets them go, that will deliver a revolution. If we are looking for a pan-African Afrocentrist revolution, it's not going to come from parliament. We still need to have parliament going, because while we are on the journey there, you still need laws to be passed on law and order, on security, on border control, on those things. So, like, you can't say shut down, let's extinguish everything and let's start afresh. You still need something. That's why when apartheid was voted unconstitutional by whites themselves, I think it was 1990, but the ANC had not been voted into power. You needed what you called a transitional executive council, because somebody must run. In the meantime, the country is running. I mean, people are buying electricity, people are committing crime, people are crossing borders. So in the meantime, you need some form of governance. But having said so, I don't want us to fool ourselves and think that there is a single parliament that will deliver a revolution, because the systems of this parliament themselves were left for us by our former colonizers. I do not know of any single one of these parliaments that have really got down to say, how does this tie in with our pre-colonial law and order? How does this tie in with our pre-colonial social system? Maybe the UDC, because I was in Botswana and I met both the chair and the deputy and I heard them speak. It was actually very touching to hear the leader of UDC speak. Maybe they will get down to the book and say, okay, how does this really relate to us as Botswana? How is it integrated? But we never do that exercise. We just keep it stepping. And I think that becomes the problem of parliament. But I think Maipelo can also give us her opinion.
Yeah, sure. I think you took the words out of my mouth, Dr. Tshabalala. You see, as the UDC, we are not trying to do a hostile takeover. Like what happened in Zimbabwe, where it's like one day farmers just found their farms just being ransacked and so forth. We are trying to use the very mechanisms that were left by our colonizers. We are now just wanting to, I don't know how to explain it, but use the very tools, the very systems that are already in place, work around them, and ensure that we pass laws, we pass policies, programs, and so forth. We change things within what is already existing, and obviously tailor make it to what suits us, this generation that we were currently at. So for us, that's why I said the first and best case scenario is to ensure that we get the 31 seats as the UDC. And obviously now when we want to change the constitution, we need a 2/3 majority. So we will use the institutions that are already in place. I think I was having a debate recently and I was referring to Qatar, which I was at a speaking engagement in Qatar very recently, and I have seen how that country has literally developed, and they were decolonized round about the same time as us. Clearly, they're doing something right. But we know, of course, that the kingdom of it's a monarchy. Somebody from the audience asked me, so as the UDC government, are you trying to say that you're bringing us as Botswana into a monarchy? I'm like, but the current government of the day has diplomatic relations with China, which is a communist state. Are you trying to say to us that as the BDP, you're trying to bring communism into Botswana? Of course not. But there are things that China is doing right, the whole industrialization, that obviously we can benchmark off and we can tailor make it to suit us in the country as Botswana. So that is who we are. That is what we're saying as the UDC. And I heard you talk about, so why do we want to go into parliament if it's like a toothless dog, so to speak? Please mind the language. We do not want to increase 5-6 seats and be an opposition as the UDC. What we are saying is that we are a government in waiting. We are ready to govern. We are ready to take over from where the BDP has left the country in. I mean, I can go on and on about what is currently going on in the country in Ziki, and maybe as the conversation progresses, I will actually be able to paint the actual picture of what's going on the ground in Botswana, like what Dr. Tshabalala says, without sounding like, without trying to portray the country in a bad light, but we are just painting the picture for the audience to know and understand that this is actually the reality of what is taking place in Botswana. Once again, I will reiterate, we're not saying everything is bad, but what we are saying is that the BDP-led government has reached a sell-by date, and as the umbrella, we are offering an alternative to what BDP has been doing. We don't want just parliament, we want the majority to govern, to answer your question.
I think we return it back to Ntsiki.
She's blank. Maybe her screen is not.
We don't want just parliament. I hope I'm not jumping. Okay, so we were both colonized by the British. I'm hoping that you guys can hear me right now.
We hear you perfectly.
We were both colonized by the British, but I'm hearing you speak a lot about the Chinese and Asian colonization, secondary colonization. About that, and I mean, who is our enemy then?
Once again, Botswana was not it was not colonized. It was a protectorate. That means that we went and sought refuge to the British or at the British. Who is our enemy?
I think I can assist.
I think you should.
I think I can step in here. Look, obviously what we describe as classical Western Europe, and in particular the direct former colonizers, continue to dabble and to interfere in the economies of Africa, and Botswana no exception really. I mean, DPA is not a Botswana founded company. DPA is a multinational cooperation which belongs with the Anglo-American money. So when you go to former French colonies, you'll see that the money is Franco-Belgian because both speak French. And when you go to Portuguese, you'll find that the money is Italian, Spanish, because the languages are similar. So that's why we even have the pocket Lusophone, which is former Portuguese colonies. There are 5 in Africa, 2 countries and 3 islands. And then we have Francophone, which is all the former French colonies. Then we have us, the Commonwealth. It's funny, I was watching the news when I was going to your rally at Maipelo in Botswana. I think there's a Commonwealth meeting that took place in the week that has just passed. And I was wondering, what is so common with the wealth amongst all the English-speaking countries? Amongst all the former British colonies, because we are the ones who speak English and we constitute what's called the Commonwealth. What's so common about that wealth? Because Britain is by far the richest of all of us, because it continues to reap profits out of our country. So right from there, we know who the enemy is. The Chinese have joined, by the way. The Chinese are hard to analyze. It's a 50-50 thing, because they also not come clean into Africa. I mean, they have a population explosion. We all know that. So they're always looking for opportunities for their people. There are stories in this continent, Angola and the other countries, where the Chinese would come and install something, and everybody that's employed there is a Chinese. They import everybody. They import their labor into there. So they've literally somehow just joined. They've also joined in terms of debt. Our countries are indebted to China, not just to the IMF and World Bank in the recent 10 to 15 years, or 20 even. So you know who your enemy is by who's refusing your development. That's just plain and sweet. And we know currently through organizations like the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation, I'll look for the proper name, OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, it's European. They determine how much tax must be paid by multinational companies. They're the ones who are refusing for tax to go to the United Nations General Assembly to be discussed there, where all African countries are present, because they support multinationals who continue to evade tax in our continent, but who continue to underpay our workers. It's like a double-edged sword. So I think for me, it's easy truly to know who the enemy is. I don't want us to be misled, though, in this show and think that our governments are the enemy. Well, our governments are the spanner boys in the literal sense of the word. They pass the spanners to the multinational corporations. Those are the people that are ruling. That's the hidden hand behind everything, because Maipelo knows about this, because this is how we met. Me and her belong to a network in Africa called the African Parliamentary Network on Illicit Financial Flows and Tax, APNIFT. A report was released in 2015, commissioned by UNECA, and actually former President Thabo Mbeki was chairing that commission. They studied 30 years, and this has been going on from colonization. And they found out that in 30 years, 2010, 1980 to 2010, we had lost an estimate of $1.5 trillion. That is Africa alone. I'm excluding North Africa, because they did not exclude it. They studied them separately. And what made me and Maipelo jump to say this is an area we want to fight in is the breakdown of that $1.5 trillion. Only 5% is direct African government corruption. 65% is corporate crimes, tax evasion, tax avoidance, profit shifting, price misinvoicing, and 30% is criminal. So truly, who is the enemy? Who are the people who are stopping our development? It's multinational corporations. Maipelo says we call them white monopoly capital. I think we should say white monopoly capital. Plus, that's where we are now, because China has joined that bandwagon. So I don't know if it answers.
I would have to say
Yes, go on, Maipelo.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was done. Go ahead.
I think that is why I'm trying to refrain from. Okay. I think that is why I'm trying to refrain from bashing a government. What we need to get right are the systems that are in existence, and like what Dr. Tshabalala is saying, those that are being used by external forces to continue to perpetuate such injustices amongst our people. I mean, Nzigi, surely it does not make sense that 58 years down the line, not a single Botswana is part of the top 10, 15, 20, 30 wealthiest people in the country. That just does not make sense. We've got the education, We were educated in the best of schools, but we're not controlling our economy. In one of my debates, Gabs FM debate last week, I spoke about how what Botswana was concentrating on is the mining aspect, that partnership with De Beers. The only thing that we were doing for the past 50 plus years is just coming in as a partner to mine these diamonds. They would be flown out of the country, taken to places through Europe. It would be Belgium. It goes on to the rest of the world. We were not anywhere involved in the cutting, the polishing. The only thing
The
that we would do
shaping.
is literally just mine. They come, they take our resources, they cut, they polish, they make jewelry and all of that and resell it back into the country. The site holders that are coming to buy these things are not Botswana. I was talking to one of the ministers in a debate, and I'm saying, you're talking about how there are 20 companies, it's like not diamond sorting, sorry, cutting and polishing firms. But those are not Botswana owned. They'll use the term Botswana because it will be like Asians that have citizenship or naturalized.
Mm, mm,
But you're not talking about Motswana Waseke, like
mm,
Maipelo.
mm,
That just
mm,
completely defies logic. You
mm.
can't go to a place like the UAE, you can't go to a place like Qatar, and the local foreigners are more wealthier than the locals. Why are we allowing that in Africa? That just does not make sense to me, Nzigi. Re ranka di degrees tse di kana kana ha e le gore we're going to sit on them, work for Chinese, work for Indians. In your case in South Africa, yes, you are now an independent state or apartheid is finished, but who is controlling the economy in South Africa?
So this is where the cookie crumbles, Nsigi and Maipelo. I must actually write a paper on this so that this theory is credited to me, Nsigi, because I've talked about it so many times and people are liking it. There's a fundamental difference between independence and liberation. Independence is an occasion. Independence happens when the colonial administrator, or even for protectorate, same thing, they decide we are going to wrap our flag now and take it away. We'll wrap our defense force and our police force and we will go away because we've elected someone amongst you. They elect, by the way. We have identified one amongst you who is not dangerous to our position, who will be the first president and take over. And then you have a day set and they officiate. Even you guys, you must go back and watch these videos. They even officiate on that so-called day of independence. They are sitting there. They take their flag down, you take yours up. You name your currency, a new name if you do. And then you have a new coat of arms, and then you have a what is this song? Khanyisile Litchfield Africa, what do we call it? You have a national anthem. That's independence. It's an occasion. That's why you celebrate it every year. It's an occasion. Liberation, totally different thing. That's why when they talk, they say we granted South Africa independence on this day. We granted Ghana independence on this day. We let Botswana go as a protectorate. It is given to you. That's independence. Nobody gives you liberation. You fight for it. You take it. It's not an occasion. It's a process. If it took 4 years to plan the scramble of Africa, 1884 to 1886, and then they still met annually to review how they are colonizing us and if it's working, it is in those meetings where the French and the Belgians, because they speak the same language, would agree, you take Rwanda, we'll take Burundi. Or the Congo is big, let's cut you half because we all speak French. It's where the British would say, no, we are taking the South. You, France, concentrate on West Africa. They had these conversations. They still have them, guys, in a secretive meeting called the Bilderberg meeting. Every year, it sits around May and June. All captains of industry from Europe attend, including royal families. And it's an all-white meeting. The Chinese and the Russians are even grafted in on special things. They don't sit through the meeting. Obama, because he was black, but because he was president of America, had to get special permission. Even then, he sat on some of the discussions, not the whole discussion. So if that's how They are planning our colonization. You think that for us to be free is going to be an occasion like independence? Never. Liberation is what we're going to fight for. Liberation is about decolonization. We have not decolonized. That's why we continue to be exporters of raw material. Like Maipelo was saying, the diamonds in Botswana are taken away. Our gold is taken away. The oil in Nigeria is taken away. What's Zambia producing in bulk, Maipelo? The copper in Zambia is taken away. We are suppliers of raw material. Europe then makes the finished product and they sell it back to us. There's literally a map I saw on Google. It gave me goosebumps. It shows what Europe has and what we have. We have all the raw materials. Most of what Europe has is manufacturing. So they need us to continue their economies because they are the manufacturer of the product, and then they bring it back to us as a finished product. We have not decolonized. We are independent, but we are not liberated. Liberation is about decolonization. It's about a revolution. You can't sleep on the 30th of March as a French colony and wake up on the 1st of April as liberated. Kanjani, where's the journey to decolonize? When you were sleeping, you went to bed and that was your journey to decolonize because you slept as a colony. You woke up, they took down their flag, they hoisted theirs. Now we are liberated. Where in your sleep you did your decolonization? It's not working. We have not decolonized the whole continent. That's why Maipelo keeps emphasizing our problems are the same. Truly, you can put a Nigerian on this show, they will tell you the same thing. We see the oil, we see the profits. Nigerians are not benefiting. Hospitals are places to die. Schools are falling apart. Children have to buy desks to go to school. Same story.
But the critical thing, the locals do not have a say in the economy.
Yes.
So it's like false power that we've been given. Who are the real, where lies the power? The power lies with those that have the resources. You can have a face and say somebody's a president and ministers and so on and so forth, but who are the people behind? Like, and as young people, we really cannot use this excuse anymore where it's like, what did our parents do? They did what they could at the time with what they had. There has never been a more critical time for Africans, especially the youth on this continent, to arise. We need to regroup, reorganize, and we need to take ownership and accountability of what is taking place in our countries. We cannot be spectators anymore, and it can't be business as usual. You know, we need to start having conversations around opening up the borders, like what we're currently doing. I'm not calling for recklessness and just opening up borders and everybody can just do willy-nilly. But at the end of the day, we do know that borders are a consequence of colonization. They've just been carried through post-colonial Africa. But we really are one. Botswana and the Northwest, we just got separated at the time because, like I said, when we became a protectorate, it's because we were fearing what the apartheid government was basically threatening. We didn't want to go through what it is South Africa went through in terms of apartheid. But we are literally one. When we open up these borders in an organized, sensible manner, I am telling you that we will be a force to be reckoned with. We will not just be termed global South countries versus global North countries. We will. Why is there not a single African country that is sitting at the UN Security Council? Why do we not have veto power? Such a powerful continent that 60% of natural resources are said to be housed on this continent. We don't have a problem with wealth, it's there. We don't have a problem. Our greatest asset on the continent is the human resources that we have.
But me, where I'm
What is the
sitting,
problem?
Mina, Maipelo, where I'm sitting, let's first answer Anya Star. It's called the Bilderberg meeting, Anya Star. Bilderberg, the Bilderberg meeting. And they have been sitting from 1954, by the way. Before they gave the so-called independence to Ghana, they already had planned how they're going to control the so-called independence. Anyway, Maipelo, where I'm sitting, I am even asking, do we need the Security Council? If the UN is where all governments are present, all decisions must be taken at the United Nations General Assembly. I am not for the United Nations Security Council. It must be eradicated. It must be criminalized, and it must be decampaigned, and it must be nullified. Everybody must sit at the United Nations General Assembly where all countries are present, and everything must be ironed out there. If you need to have technical committees like we do in a meeting, you elect people in the General Assembly and you say we are too many to deliberate this. We are going to vote for South Africa and whoever to go and hold a special meeting and deliberate this and report back, then you should. But we don't need the United Nations Security Council. We don't need Africa to be fighting to be there. We want Africa to fight for its eradication, because then that's equality. Young people of Africa, until when are we going to be users? Honestly, all the inventions of this high-tech world in which we live, they say we live in an information world, but who are the producers of the apps that we use, the platforms? It's youth, but it's not African youth. We are just consumers. How? Where's the African youth? Where is it? So I think I want to join Maipelo in that clarion call to say never before has Africa required a revolution like we require it now. And there's no revolution that has ever been led by adults. We are here to teach, to put barriers, to remind you of the history. We can't lead a revolution. Whenever I finish talking, people walk up to me and they say, okay, so what must we do? And I say, but that's not my job. I've told you what the problem is, and I've told you how it can be fixed. You are young. The revolution of the Youth League in South Africa, the Mandela crew, before Mandela sold us out, when they were youth, they led a revolution within the ANC that said, we are tired of sending protests to the Queen, and the Queen fends herself and drinks tea and listens to our tirade, and when we leave, she does nothing. We want an armed struggle. That's a revolution they brought into the ANC. The generation of 76 were young people. Do you know people were 12 years old doing what's called grade 8 today in the 1976 revolution? The revolution of the 80s, as the young lion rendered South Africa ungovernable, it was young people. The Leninist movement at the end, during the First World War, 1918, 1919, 1920, how communism came to Russia, those were young people. There's no revolution led by adults. So African youth, honestly, I said it in Botswana, man, shake the dust off your feet, chin up, and do something about this continent. We truly are just tired of being tired at this moment.
Exactly, Dr. Tshabalala. I'm reminded of Sankara's words. He said, to be young is to be valuable to the opposition. Hi. Nzigi, you are chipping in?
Yeah, I think she was trying to talk.
Oh, okay, cool. I've got a delay here.
I was just affirming Sankara's words. I was just saying I'm reminded of...
And then there's the delay, and then trying to figure it out.
No, that's fine, Ziggy. I was just making a comment based on what Dr. Tshabalala was saying. I'm reminded of Thomas Sankara's words when he says...
I was almost up. I know Dr. Khanyi's got...
We lost her.
All right.
Now
I know Dr. Tshabalala, we have to close soon. I think people just want a little bit more about UDC. Maipelo, do you want to wrap it up for us? And then Mamka, you can chip in, and then we can wrap it up.
Sure, thank you so much. I think I shared this at the beginning of the discussion. Um, the UDC, for the most part, many young people support the umbrella for democratic change. Our leaders, still very youthful, both Advocate Boko and Ndaba Khaolata, his deputy. And then you have like a whole pool of young people, young minds that are there. Few, yes, running for seats in parliament, but we're supported by young people. We're also supported by adults. We have a very rich manifesto. We talk about how there must be at least a minimum living wage of 4,000 bula, then formal sector 2,500. This is just like in its simplest form, the bare minimum, 2,500 in formal sector, 2,500 for tertiary education students, 4,000 minimum or living wage. And we are going to create 450,000 to 500,000 jobs within the first 5 years in office. And we also talk about how one of the most critical things for us to do is to change the constitution. We want direct. Actually, Botswana said this. The UDC supports it, but Botswana as well in general. They want to directly elect the president and do away with the current system where it's constituency type setup where a certain party wins a certain amount of seats and then they get to elect the leader or the president of the country. So we want to change the constitution in that sense. We want to work with multinational corporations, bring more multinational corporations into the country, but that's for purposes of job creation. Because what not everybody wants to be controlling the economy. Not everybody wants to be a millionaire or billionaire. Some just want the basics. They want to be employed, decent salary, live in a decent house, drive a decent car, and then they're happy. They want the basic infrastructure to be in place. We want street lights. I mean, it doesn't make sense why 58 years down the line in urban areas, there are potholes everywhere. Street lights, very few street lights. And the technology, look at how we've been struggling with technology, even just connecting, some of those basic things. So as the UDC government, those are some of the things that we are saying that we are going to be introducing. We're going to that is how we intend on bettering the lives of Botswana. And it's not a one man or one woman show as the UDC. We're saying that this is the manifesto that we have. It's not cookie cutter, but it's a guideline. And we want to build Botswana with the contribution of Botswana, particularly the youth. I honestly make an appeal to the youth because like what you are saying, Dr. Tshabalala, and Sankara's words, to be young is to be useful to the revolution. By revolution, we're not calling for violence. Revolution just simply means radical shift in everything. How we do business, who we allow to come and do business in our country, what it's going to benefit the locals. That is what our leaders, those are the conversations that our leaders need to be having right now. Anyone who comes into the country, how is that going to benefit Botswana? If we're not having that conversation, if we're also not having conversations about more integration, opening up of borders, easier access to trade, like what they're calling for at the Africa Free Trade Continental Area, then it's like it's like a revolving door, or having a dialogue of the deaf where it's like in one ear, out the other. I make an urge to the youth in my country and just the continent. Let us regroup, organize ourselves, and take this continent to the next level. Together, we are a force to be reckoned with. Thank you so much. That's all from me.
And I think from me, Ntsiki, thank you again for the platform, and thank you to everybody who tuned in. For me, I would leave it with the following words. Sankara says Africa looks as it looks because we are not.
Thanks, Mom Khanyi. Do you want to wrap up for us? Thank you so much, my pillow. I see a comment from KM.
Yes, I believe. Yeah, Sankara says Africa looks as it looks in Tsiki because we are not mad enough. He says you need to be mad enough to undertake a revolution in Africa. That's one. I think we are decent, too decent. We've been taught well by our former colonizers. Two, I want us to reevaluate the definition of violence. I think for Ghana, I was counting, it's exactly 57 years from 1957, if I counted well, because they are the first to be so-called independent. It's violence on its own that we are going for 60 years of so-called independence. But as Maipelo said, we are all not in charge of our economies. They continue to control the economies. They continue to subject our governments to being providers of raw material, because where governments do not collaborate or cooperate, they take them out by any means. We can talk about that another day. That is violent. So, three, I don't want us to apologize when we say revolution, to quickly say we don't mean violent means, because I think what has been inflicted on us thus far is violence. So we need to redefine what is violence, because I think we are living violence, Maipelo. Truly, it is violence to reduce us to the poverty levels that we are in. There is no reason for any Congolese, Congo DRC, to be hungry and to be a refugee anywhere in the world currently, because any cell phone, any computer, any PC related thing that you hold in your hand, that material is in the Congo. So they've subjected us to immense violence, untold levels of violence, and we need to redefine that violence. The last thing I want to say and ask the listeners and tell young people to keep fighting and campaigning against: why are our minerals always gaining value when they leave our shores? Why is Starbucks making more money out of coffee than the coffee beans grower in Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, etc.? Why is gold more expensive as a finished product than it is when it is taken out of our soil? Why are you paid peanuts to mine gold if gold is such a valuable mineral? You understand? Why is Caltex or Engine or whoever making more money than the Nigerian government out of Nigerian oil? It does not make sense, because they determine the price. This is madness. It's like me telling my pillow, I want to buy that UDC cap you're wearing, but I'm going to buy it at 2 rands. So I'm a buyer, but I am the one that sets the price and the value to that cap. So young Africans, we need to start to fight for all our minerals and natural resources to gain their value while they're in a continent. And we also need to come now to a higher level, which is what they killed Gaddafi for, to say you will buy our natural resources in our currencies, because we need to detach from the petrodollar. We are making America look important. The more our economies are tied to the dollar, the more we are giving America money to go around invading countries. America has been at war from 1945, at the end of the Second World War. Can you believe it? Each president have been invading, starting wars, the other one continuing, the other one's war, the other one. They have been at war since. They have the money because we keep the dollar up by tying our economies to the dollar. So me, I am saying as the parting words, down to the petrodollar, down with the US dollar. We have our own currencies. Those minerals are ours. If you want to buy South African gold, buy it at the rand. If you want to buy the diamonds of Botswana, buy them Kapula. And all our currencies need to be trading currencies, not landlocked currencies. I think I'll leave it at that. I think there's a delay.
Thank you so much. I don't know how long that delay is when the thank is going to come in, but I'd love to thank Osman Pillow for joining us to give us words from Botswana, and all and all the best with your campaigns, and vote for a young woman to get into parliament. Thank you, Mam Kanye, for your
Yes.
leadership and your guidance. I think what you're giving to the African youth is that you are connecting all of us across the countries. So by the time that it's time for you to go on your ancestral journey, you would have made sure that we are the African family is together. And thank you so, so much for playing that role. We appreciate you. And once again, all the best to my pillow. Thank you so much.
Yes,
And we wish you the best. Thank you so much,
yes.
everybody, for joining.
All the best, my
Siyabulela.
pillow. Mm.